Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Chof Beis Amud Aleph, starting with Chof Aleph Amud Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. The Gemara continues darshaning various psukim from Tanakh, including a pasuk now from Shir HaShirim. The pasuk in its entirety is read, Roishoy Kesem Poz. His head is of fine gold. Kavutzois of Taltalim. His hair locks are wavy. Shecharois ke'orev. Black like a raven. Says the Gemara. Kavutzois of Taltalim. His hair locks are wavy. Omar Rav Chizda Mar Ukva Melamed. Sheyesh lidrosh al kol koitz ve'koitz tilei tilim shel halachos. That one can darshan the koitzim of the letters of the Torah. Heaps and heaps of halachos. Shecharois ke'orev. Black like a raven, b'mi ata moitzin. To whom can then you find that will bring out these heaps and heaps of halachos by darshaning the koitzim? B'mi shemashkim umariv aleim lebeis hamedrash. On top of Chof Beis Amud Aleph, to one who is able to then get up early and leave late at night from the Beis hamedrash, is a play on the words shcharos ke'orev. Shcharos from the word shacharis and orev lashon arvis. Rabba Omar b'misha mashchir ponov alim ke'orev. One who blackens his face like a black raven. That means to say that he then gives up and he denies himself all types of physical pleasures and material benefits so that he can then dive and delve into the Gemara, into the Halacha, into the Torah. Rava Omar, Rava stated, just like the Orev is known that it flies away from its nest, leaving its fledglings in the nest without food, whereby HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in his infinite wisdom and rachamim, allows the feces to turn into worms, whereby the fledglings get their food that way. So too, Misha Boteach Bahashem, like the Orev, so that his family will be fed. He went to the Beis HaMedrash. Omar le devisu yenuki didoch mai ma'avi lahu. His wife turns to him and says, what am I going to do with your children? How am I going to feed them? Omar lo mishlime kurme ba'agama. Is the agam, is the vegetation that is in the swamps completed? In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will then be able to feed them in different ways, including the vegetation that is found there. Umeshalim the soinav el ponov lahavidoi. The pasuk that's read in regards to the schar and oynesh, it talks about where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to repay those who hate him to his face, to destroy him. Om Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, ilmole mikra kosuv I efshar la'imroi. In other words, the Gemara understands that El Ponov is not referring to the face of the one that hates HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Hashem is going to pay him, but rather to Hashem's face. Kiviyachal ke'odem shenoise masui al Ponov umevakesh lahashlicho mimenu. As if to say that it's like a person who has a heavy load on his face and he wants to then remove it. So too, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kiviyachal has a certain debt that he wants to pay the Rasha for his good deeds, and he wants to get rid of that debt. And he doesn't tarry to then pay back the enemy. It's only the enemies that he does not tarry, that he does not then wait to then pay them back. Whereas he does then delay the great reward for the tzaddikim for the next world, which is going to be everlasting happiness. V'hainu dom Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, what's meant by the following pasuk when tzaddikim do the mitzvahs of Hashem, asher anoichi mitzavcha yoim la'asoisom. The pasuk concludes that I command you to do them today. Hayoim la'asoisom. The emphasis is today to do. And not tomorrow to do. Today, in this world, this is a world of avodah. Yet the next world is a world of schar. Today is for doing because you will not be able to then do more mitzvahs in the next world. It's only here when you have your bechira while you're alive in this world. But the next world is going to then be for schar. And therefore this world should not be confused that a person should get schar for all of his mitzvah performance here in this world. It's waiting for him in the Olam Habo. Says Gemara, Vayter Amar B'Chagai V'Yitem Rabbi Yishmuel Bar Nachmeni. My Dichsiv Erech Apayim. What's meant by the words in the pasuk of Erech Apayim? Hashem's slow to get angry. Erech Af Mi Boile. It should say singular. Erech Af. Ella, says the Gemara, it's referring to Apayim. There's two faces. Akash Baruch Hu is manhig. He's noheg to be manhig, a way of two different faces. Ella erech apayim latzadikim, erech apayim l'rishoyim. He shows a happy face to the tzadikim that he was going to then pay them in the next world, and he shows an angry face to the rishoyim that he has to then pay them in the next world. In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he is waiting to give the tzadikim their great reward, so therefore he's patient. But he also is giving time for the Rishoyim to do tshuva, and therefore he's patient too to then punish them in the next world. The Gemara now quotes the Mishnah Rabbi Yehuda Omer Ad Beis Sosayim, that the Pasina Beirois can only encircle an area of Beis Sosayim, which comes out to be 5,000 square amos. Iboy Lahu, the Gemara has the following question: what does this area come to include? Bor upasim kamar, does it come to include both the bor and the pasim? We said that there's a minimum area of 2 amos that the para has to be able to then be within. In other words, because we're worried that maybe the one who's going to draw the water, if it's not going to be at least a distance of 2 amos, then he may then be pulled out with the animal beyond the border, and therefore he'll be over hoitzah. So what does this come to include when Rabbi Yehuda says 2 beis sosayim? Bor upasim kamar, does it mean the bor and the pasim together is the 2 saw? Or is it dilma bor v'loy pasim kamar? Is it bor meaning a full 2 saw and not including the pasim, the extra 2 amos? Adam noisin einav beboro v'lo gazrinon. A person puts his eyes on the bor itself, and therefore he sees that even though it might be the bor with 2 additional amos, he's not going to make a mistake by other karpef that will be beyond 2 saw, because his focus is on the bor itself. Or do we say that no, a person's eyes are focused on the mechitzos, and therefore there would be a concern that if we indeed included additional 2 amos, then it would also be confused in another karpef, whereby we would make a gezerah that's only 2 sosayim, including the 2 amos. Toshma, let's bring a proof whether the area is Beis Sosayim with the 2 amos or it's without the 2 amos. Kama hein mekuravin, what is the closest that you can come within the water area? Kedei rosha v'ruba shel para, which we said is 2 amos. V'kama hein murchokim, what is the furthest that one can then bring the pasin la beirois to enclose the area? Says the Braisa, afilu kur or afilu kurayim, even if it's going to be as big as a kur, which is 30 saw, or kurayim, which is double that amount. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, beis sosayim mutar yosim beis sosayim also. Rabbi Yehuda says no, only a beis sosayim, only 5,000 square amos. Omru loy le Rabbi Yehuda. They said to Rabbi Yehuda, I'ata moide bedir v'sar mukse v'chotzer afil beis chameshes kurim v'beis asaras kurim shemutar. Wouldn't you agree with us when it comes to a corral, either let's say outside the city, where they make corrals for the animals to then make fertilizer, or within the city? And these are places where those who are watching the animals will also sleep in. And the muktzah, which is the backside of the chotzer, and the chotzer itself, all of these are residential areas where people will have usage on a regular basis, whereby you can enclose it in any great size you want, even going to be 5 kur or 10 kur? Omar lehen, Rabbi Yehuda's response to them is, that's different. Zu mechitza ve'elu pasin. Those that you just mentioned have mechitzos. But over here, in regard to the water source, the be'er, these pasin la be'rois, this is pasin. It's different. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar oimer bor beis sasayim. Beis sasayim muter. The Brisa continues and explains the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar as being that you need to have a bor that is going to be only encompassing a beis sasayim. And they only said that you can distance in order to then have the space of 2 amos for the para, the rosh and the roiv of the para. That's Adkan the Brisa. Now the Gemara wants to then prove from this Brisa, bor v'loy pasin. The fact that Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says bor and does not include pasin, that means to say that it's 2,000. It's base saw without the 2 amos, without the pasin. Michlal, the Rabbi Yehuda bor upasin komer. That which Rabbi Yehuda then is earlier on the Brisa is arguing must be then saying that it's both bor and pasin together makes up the base saw, the base sayim. V'lo, he says, Gemara, you have no proof. Rabbi Yehuda bor beloy passing on. Rabbi Yehuda also was talking about a bor, meaning it would be base sayim without the 2 amos. I asked the Gemara, Ihochi. Hainu Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. That is the same opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. What's the machlekes then between them? Answers the Gemara, Ika beinayu. The difference between them is as follows: Orich v'kotin. When it comes to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, he says it can be rectangular, whereas according to the opinion that we just quoted of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, it has to be square, and therefore Beis Hasayim, by Beis Hasayim, he emphasized as being a square and not rectangular. The Gemara now brings a klal, a principle in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Klal Omer Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar called avir shetashmishoy lediro kegon dir v'sar muksa v'chotzer afilu beis chameshes kurim ubeis aseres kurim muter. He says if you have a structure that is made for residential purposes, even if it's going to be without a roof, it's still going to then be able to enclose a tremendously large area, like chameshes kurim or 10 kurim. V'koldir shetashmish la'avir kegon burganin shebesados beis hasayim muter yes and beis hasayim oser. But if it's something that's only going to be used for a temporary basis, like a watchman, a burgamin, just a little makeshift type of hut for a watchman to sit in temporarily, then you can only enclose such an area with beis hasayim. Beyond that, you're not going to be able to be metaltil. The Gemara now brings the next Mishnah. This Mishnah discusses whether a Rishus Harab, whether the people who are traveling Rishus Harabim will then mevatel the mechitzos. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda Oimer, Im haya derech Rishus Harabim mafsakton. Yisal kenen litzdadim. According to Rabbi Yehuda, in regards to our pasin la beirois, if it's in the public thoroughfare, and people are going to then walk through the walls, the open walls of the pasin la beirois, they will mevatil those walls, and therefore you have to masalik them. You have to have them go around, otherwise they'll ruin the walls. It'll become invalid as a result. You don't have to then reroute them because they're not going to mevatil the walls of the pasin la beirois. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Elazar, the Amrei Tevai, they both stated, Kan hodiucha koichan shel mechitzos. Here you see the strength, the Chacham are telling you, of mechitzos, that even though the public is walking through the pasin la beiros, they are not mevatel those mechitzos. Says the Gemara, Kan v'svira lei, meaning the emphasis is here. Rabbi Yochanan says, and he holds this, meaning here, v'svira, and he holds indeed that this is so. Ask the Gemara, is that so that Rabbi Yochanan ascribes to that opinion that it's not going to mevatel the mechitzos? Ve'omer Rabbi Babarchane, Rabbi Yochanan. We say in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Yushalayim ilmolei dilososeho nin olos belayla chayav naleh mishum mishus harabim. Yerushalayim had walls around it, but they also had the gates from one end to the other. So Rabbi Yochanan says that if it were not for the fact that the gates would be closed, then one would be chayiv as a rishus harabim. Mashma, though, that if it was not for the gates, then it would be a rishus harabim. That means that it would mevatel the mechitzos. So you see that Rabbi Yochanan says that indeed when the public thoroughfare, when the public is walking through, they are mevatel mechitzos, not like we said before. Elakaim v'lo svirole. Must you say that here the Chacham are showing that in regards to pasin la beirois, they are going to mevatel, they're not going to mevatel mechitzos, but Rabbi Yochanan does not ascribe to that opinion. Rami de Rabbi Yehuda, ad Rabbi Yehuda, Rami de Rabbona de Rabbona. The Gemara now brings the following brisa to show the following contradiction between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbonan on the Rabbonan. The Tanya. Yes, sir, Al Kain. We have the following statement. It says, beyond what Rabbi Yehuda said until now, Omar Rabbi Yehuda said it the following. Mishahayu loi shnei batim. If a person has two houses, one across from the other, with the Rishus HaRabim going in between them. Mishnei tzidei Rishus HaRabim, oise lo lechi mikan v'lechi mikan, oy kore mikan v'kore v'noise be'emtza. He says if you have two houses across from one another, with the public thoroughfare going in between them, he says you can make either a lechi on one side and lechi on the other side of the same house, or a kara mikan or kara mikan, and that will then enable you to then use the area in between the two mechitzos. So here we see that Rabbi Yochanan saying that the fact that the public is going through will not mevatel the mechitzos. The Rabbanan's response to Rabbi Yochanan is Amruloi ein ma'arvin rishus harabim bekach. You cannot make an eruv in the rishus harabim in this way. Is mashma that the rishus harabim, that the public thoroughfare is going in between these walls, are yes going to mevatel the mechitzos. So ask the Gemara, Kasher de Rabbi Yehuda ad Rabbi Yehuda, Kasher Rabbanan ad Rabbanan. We have a contradiction because Rabbi Yehuda said in our Mishnah that the public is going to mevatel the mechitzos, and yet over here in this statement he says they are not going to mevatel mechitzos. And conversely, in our Mishnah the Rabbanan said that the Rabbim will not mevatel mechitzos, and over here they are saying that they are going to mevatel the mechitzos. Answers the Gemara, the Rabbi Yehuda lo kasha. Hasam the ika shtei mechitzos ma'al yasa, hachaleka shtei mechitzos ma'al yasa. Over there, in that case, the brayso that we just quoted, there are two valid mechitzos. That means there's a house across from the other house. Each one has a mechitza. So therefore, as valid mechitzos, the Rabbim are not going to mevatel those mechitzos. But in our Mishnah, we're talking about pasin la beirois. Pasin la beirois, those are not typical mechitzos. Those are parutz meruba ala oimed, which we have a diyumdin on each corner, one amma by one amma, closing off that water source. So therefore, the Rabbi will mevatel those mechitzos. The Rabbanan nami lo kasha. We also can answer there's no contradiction within the Rabbanan, because hacha iko shem arba mechitzos hasam leka shem dal mechitzos. Because over here, gai be pasin libeirois, it has the maila of 4 mechitzos. Granted, there's a special kula with these mechitzos, because it's only, again, a diyumdin on each corner, one amma by one amma, closing off the water source, but still it's considered to be 4 mechitzos. Whereas over there in the brayso that we just discussed, that's talking about when two houses are opposite from another, it's only 2 mechitzos. And therefore the Rabbanan say, in our Mishnah, those rabbim will not mevatel the mechitzos because they're 4 mechitzos. But when there are only 2 mechitzos, then they will, yes, mevatel those mechitzos.